You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 371 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer and I'll be your host. And I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin and he's coming to us high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
It's going well, Jeremy. Thanks very much for asking.
We've had quite a week that we're gonna have to talk about here, and I'm very excited. It's been it's a week that was great on the field. We got problems off the field to discuss, all kinds of news and happenings, and to help us talk all things Cubs this week. Longtime friend of the show, you know her from her work at Bleed Cubby Blue. She's a host of the Cup of Cubby Blue podcast, which is part of the Bleacher Bunch Network. Sara Sanchez, thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Yeah, I wish it were under better circumstances, but thanks for having me.
Well, we can start with the positives, and then we'll get to the news of the week. But on the field, we had some positives here. The Cubs took 2 out of 3 from Texas, and I think to the surprise of many, went to LA and took 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers, who I didn't see it coming. I was more pessimistic than you last week, Pat. You successfully predicted a 4-2 week.
I did, Jeremy, and I was a little disappointed that I was the only one out on a limb there. But I told you we take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. I promised you that much.
We were at the only loss to Texas at home. We went to the Shota Imanaga game where the wind was blowing pretty harsh and a couple of fly balls ended up getting out of here. Corey Seager doing some damage and the Cubs losing to Texas. But the Cubs had a good showing on Monday and Tuesday in freezing cold temperatures. Sara, were you at any of these freezing cold games?
I was not. I was actually in Atlanta for work.
Okay.
I've seen one baseball game in person so far this year, and I am pleased to report that Kyle Schwarber hit a Schwarbomb for me. At that game, I went to visit Truist Park while I was out for a work event, and I got to see a Schwarbomb, which was amazing. But no, I have yet to be at Wrigley Field this year. I intend on rectifying this weekend.
Perfect. Yeah, we had really cold temperatures on Monday and Tuesday, and the Cubs offense surprising, putting up 7-0 in a victory where we saw Justin Steele pitch well, unfortunately for the final time this season, as just a tough injury. We can talk about that real quick here. Justin Steele out for the season. Sara, this is obviously devastating news for the Cubs rotation. I was joking with Pat that thank goodness they stockpiled a bunch of 4th and 5th starters for just this situation. But losing an ace is pretty tough.
Yeah, it's devastating. So I just recently was on the Cubs PS Plus podcast, also part of the Bleacher Bunch Network, with another friend of the show, Mike Waller. And one of the things that Mike and I did last year at the end of the season, but then we committed to doing this year, was redoing the offseason. Like, what were the moves we disagreed with on, and where would we have gone differently, all of that type of stuff. And last year we did that at the end of the year, but we felt a little bit like we got hindsight is 2020 there, and like, who's going to really believe us that we would have signed this guy instead of that guy in March? And so we decided this year that we were going to do that exercise now at the beginning of the season and then revisit it at the end of the season. It's a really interesting episode if you want to check it out. But I bring that up mainly because both Mike and I agreed that the 2 places we thought the Cubs needed to do a tiny bit more, one more top end starting pitcher and slightly better bullpen help. And I think we're about to see that movie play out, right? Because when you have Steele and Shota and they're both kind of SP1, SP2s, you feel really good about the fact that Matthew Boyd might be like a 3-4 guy, but he's really pitching like a 2-3 guy right now, but you don't expect that all season. It's okay. When you lose one of those SP1, SP2s, this rotation looks a lot different. I do want to say, I think the Cubs have some game here. And I, one, they have an excellent farm system if they decide that they want to go out and trade for like a Sandy Alcantara or something like that, right? And I do think that the Cubs need to be early on the trade market. This is a time where you don't wait for the trade deadline. Like, you just go get a guy and you trade from some of that talent that you've got stocked in Iowa and make it happen. Number two, the Cubs are sitting on an arm in Cade Horton, who could be a top end rotation type of guy. And if Ben Brown keeps pitching the way that he does and Cade Horton comes through, I feel great about this team. The problem is that you should not be banking on two guys that are basically at the very beginning of their career to make this happen. And that's where the Cubs are right now, having lost Justin Steele. And I am devastated. I did not get to see Justin Steele pitch in person this year, and that is not okay. I'm really not okay about it.
Justin Steele, by the way, leading the league in wins with 3 after having only 6 all last year. Off to a good start. Yeah, I think to Sarah's point, the Cubs' problem has been the lack of, and we talked about this in the offseason, Jeremy, we wanted an ace pitcher to go with the other pitchers we had. Matthew Boyd, I think, when healthy and everything going right, could be like a lower level number 2, but probably like a number 3, solid number 3 pitcher. Tyon, when he's going well, number 3 pitcher. So you got basically Shota, you hope is your 1, couple 3s, and everybody else are 4s and 5s. I mean, there's just, maybe you get lightning in a bottle with somebody. It's not going to be Wicks. So maybe it's Horton, maybe it's Brown. But again, that's a lot to ask. There are really only 2 ways that you can improve your pitching staff, or really anything on your team, outside of developing players yourself. And that is by either making trades, and trading for good pitchers is very expensive in terms of the prospects you give up. And people complain about that. I understand, but that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to buy them, which is what we were advocating for in the offseason. But inevitably, pitchers are very expensive on the market and cost a lot of money. And these days, the number of years on those contracts, are I mean, we can call them, optimistically absurd, probably, but that's the price, right? So that's the going rate. It's not that they're overpriced; it's that the price is really, really, really high. And so last offseason, when we were like, oh, let's get Max Fried, and then signs this monster contract, inevitably most people on social media are like, well, I really would like Max Fried, but not for that much. That's too much. That's too many years. That's too much money. And it's true of every single pitcher that goes off the market. It's like, no, that's too much money. That's right. Even Boyd, people, looked at it and said, wow, that's a lot of money for a couple of years for him, for what he's done. I have not seen since the Gausman, Robbie Ray scenario 4 or 5 years ago, I've not seen any starting pitcher who's a free agent sign a contract on the open market with a new team where people have said, oh, well, that seems like a square deal. Everybody always thinks that the deals are off the charts wrong. And, 2 or 3 years later, you're like, oh, well, in comparison, it's not as bad as it is now. It keeps going up and up and up. So it's a real conundrum. And since the Cubs did not go that route, that bridge has been burned, I guess, crossed. I don't know. Like, something has happened, but you can't do that anymore. All you can do at this point is buy somebody via a trade, acquire somebody. And that's going to get super expensive. So, you hear, oh, what about Alcantara or what's his name? Sandy, right?
Sandy Alcantara. Yeah.
Alcantara. Yeah. I got my Pablo Lopez, Sandy Alcantara pitchers mixed up for a second, but in my head, yeah. So you've got a few options out there, but there are gonna be a lot of teams that need pitching. The Yankees are gonna need pitching. You never know, like, what other teams who are willing to spend money are gonna say, you know what, let's go get a pitcher. And to that extent, if the Cubs do want to get one, it's going to be really expensive. So I feel that they will tread water for as long as they can. And honestly, maybe they can win the division without Justin Steele. Who knows? This division has not looked very good to begin with. But in order to make a serious run in the playoffs, they're going to need another upper end pitcher, And they passed on trades for Dylan Cease and others, I think, during the offseason. And so, so we'll see where that takes us. But yeah, it's going to be bubblegum and paper clips for a while. I mean, the Colin Ray 3.1 innings was great, but I mean, you can't do that forever, and it's going to be tricky.
Yeah, friend of the show, Brendan Miller, tweeted that Justin Steele's season-ending injury, the Cubs now need to replace 3 to 5 WAR. His replacement, Colin Ray, was worth 1 WAR over 167 innings last season. So,
look, it's not Colin Ray. Like, let's just be real. I like Colin Ray. I think Colin Ray is a really interesting swingman, middle reliever, occasional spot starter, and the Cubs got very lucky with what he did against the Dodgers last night. The other night, it might have been last night. I'm having one of those weeks where time feels like it's like, what was the day? I don't know, but but Colin Ray is not your replacement for Justin Steele. There is absolutely no world where that is a good idea if you want to make a push in the playoffs. And I think that the Cubs have some options here. I want to throw out to y'all something I've been thinking about, which is something that the San Diego Padres did last year. And I would really love to see Jed Hoyer channel whatever fire he's got in him to make this happen. Because what the Padres did last year was when they needed a guy, they went out and got Luis Arias early. They didn't wait for the trade deadline. They just went out and got the guy. They were like, need guy, go get guy. I feel like the Cubs will get a better deal now going out to try to make that move now rather than trying to wait until they're competing with the Yankees and the Orioles and the Diamondbacks and whoever else needs pitching in July. We know the Cubs need pitching right now. We know the Marlins aren't going to be competitive and have some pitching, right? Like, just go talk to the Marlins and be like, the Cubs have a plethora of interesting outfielders who have no chance of playing on this team for the foreseeable future, staring down the exact same road that we lost Alexander Canario to, which is you're out of options, you have no chance at playing time. Like, what are we going to do? And it would be interesting to see what the Cubs could do with package Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara, throw together some of these guys who are not going to get any playing time on the north side of Chicago this season or probably next, and see what you can do to get a pitcher who can solidify this rotation.
I think that's a real salient point, because one of the advantages the Cubs have in losing Steele so early is we know we need to replace Steele, whereas some of these other teams haven't reached that point yet. Like, they haven't either had the injury that they're expecting, or they've gone into the season with the rotation they have, and they're going to give it a couple months to see whether or not they were right or not. They're not going to just give up after 3 weeks. The Cubs absolutely are in a position where they now are in crisis mode. And unless there's a belief that somehow, Cade Horton is going to emerge from, what is he in, AA now? I don't know. He pitched the other day somewhere. I
think he's in AAA.
AAA? Oh, good. So
but he's got 20 innings there.
Yeah, right. And he had about 40 last year. So, so he's fresh. You can't really hope for that. Now, the flip side to that is that's exactly the type of person who other teams are going to want in exchange for their good pitchers, which is why free agents are so expensive, because you don't have to give up prospects for them. And so if you're going to go the route they're going now, it could hurt. We could feel some pain, but hopefully they have enough position players. And, there are different kinds of pitchers you can get. You can get guys who are in the last year of a deal, right? And that might be a little bit cheaper versus somebody who's got several years of, on their contract still. And of course, you've got the looming potential contract issue at the end of next year, 2026, which will, probably dictate contracts moving forward in the future. So, that's been kind of this elephant in the room, I think, for a lot of decision making from a lot of clubs lately, other than the Dodgers, who will just don't care and will just spend the money. But yeah, so I think that's a good idea. I think if you're going to get somebody, do it now, because also the other advantage of doing it now is the AAA players or the AA players that you're giving up aren't helping your team at all right now, right? They're just helping the Iowa Cubs or South Bend. But the pitcher you get to replace Steele will start helping you immediately, and that's what they need to make sure that they have enough margin for error to make it, to the postseason. Which, in Kyle Tucker's final year of his contract, I think we can all admit is somebody we want to have play in the playoffs with the Cubs.
Yeah, the Kyle Tucker, a huge part of the Cubs offense so far in the first few series. And
Jeremy, not only is he a huge part of the Cubs offense, here's a stat from OptaStats that I saw today on one of the social media devices. It says Kyle Tucker has 23 hits, 19 runs, 18 RBIs, and 15 walks through the first 18 games of his career with the Cubs. The only player in Major League Baseball history to do that.
History was also
impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. History was also made this weekend when Kyle Tucker and the Cubs offense went off on the Dodgers. Worst shutout loss in Dodgers history. Fantastic. 16-0.
Now, just to clarify, are they an expansion team or is this like a team that's been around for a while?
Just a bit.
I did some checking. At first, I thought they meant the Los Angeles Dodgers, but in fact, it means the Dodgers franchise. So it goes back to Brooklyn. So we're talking a 100-year history of playing baseball games without getting humiliated to the degree to which they got humiliated 2 nights ago.
And Sarah, it was super fun because it was a close game. It was 2-0 until the 7th inning, and then that's when the wheels fell off for the Dodgers.
It was such a fun game to watch. It was actually a fun series to watch. Number one, never bet against Michael Busch against his old team.
Right?
Michael Busch goes off against the Dodgers on the regular. He's just like, and remember me? Let me hit another home run. Let me just show you what I can do. Oh, you got rid of me? Sorry, you shouldn't have done that. That is one of my favorite things about watching the Cubs play the Dodgers. Number two, PCA likes that, like being at home, having his family around too. He was kind of showing off a bit as well. It was just a fun series to watch. It was a fun game. It was fun to watch them pour on that many runs. It was fun to watch the close game on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball and be like, oh, hey, the Cubs are going to bullpen their way to a win against this juggernaut Dodgers team with Tyler Glass now on the mound. Nobody like Pete Crow Armstrong's hitting bombs. He don't care. He's just like, I'm going to hit a home run off this guy. It's going to be great. The offense that the Cubs have shown so far this year, and this is not to be like, I told you so, but like, I really do feel like I've been banging the drum for a few years now of the Cubs didn't have the guy. They had a really good set of number 2 guys. Like Dansby's a number 2 guy. Saya's a number 2 guy. Hap's a number 2 guy. They have a lot of guys who you want as your like core, but they didn't have the guy. Kyle Tucker transforms this offense into a powerhouse. The likes of which we haven't seen this team have since like 2016, 2017. It is so fun to watch. I'm so into it. And now I just need them to solidify this pitching situation because right now the Cubs, I think when I was looking earlier today, have the best run differential in the majors at plus 43. Now, admittedly, they have a couple more games than everybody else, but like your Chicago Cubs are the best offensive team in baseball, and it's not particularly close. If you go, so I like two ways to look at this. If you go over to Fangraphs and you sort by team batting, right, and you just kind of can look at how much WAR the team has put up collectively so far. Going into that Dodgers series, the Cubs were at like 5.7 WAR. The Dodgers were at like 2.6 WAR. The Cubs have lapped the Dodgers. It's the only team in baseball that's played the same number of games that they have. And the second thing that I'll say, I'm a fantasy baseball girl, so I'm always looking at like auction values and trying to get an idea of like what players have done relative to other players. Kyle Tucker has been one of, if not the best players from a fantasy baseball perspective, period, the end. Like number 1 player in baseball situation, up there with Ohtani, up there with Judge. That is the type of production the Cubs are getting right now. It is spectacular. I am here for it. Give the man all the money, 12-year contract, something that starts with a 4 or a 5 and has a lot of zeros after it. I want that man to be a Cub for life.
And Jeremy, you drafted him with the 7th pick in the first round of our fantasy baseball draft.
That is correct.
Great pick. Great
yes.
pick.
And yeah, how long has it been? I mean, since the Cubs have had a guy where it's must watch when he comes to the plate. Like you can't miss it. Like you're not going to get a sandwich. You're not going to the bathroom. You got to wait till Kyle Tucker's done batting because
probably since they got Bryce Harper. Almost. Remember?
Almost.
That would have been the time. Yeah, it has been a long time. When you said they finally got the player, I thought you meant Carson Kelly at first. The Cubs catcher extraordinaire. Just to put hang a lantern on the point that you made about the Cubs offense. The Cubs offense is so good that the Cubs lead all of baseball in the number of runners left in scoring position with 79. The Cubs have left 79 players on base, the most by far of any team in baseball, like double most teams. And yet, with runners in scoring position, the Cubs are hitting 302, which is first in the league, with a 404 on base percentage, first in the league,
I
a
can't
473 slugging percentage, and a WRC plus of 150, meaning that the Cubs are just putting so many people on base and in scoring position that they can score like some of them, most of them, but still have so many left over that it's still more than any other team has. So that's the amazing part.
There's one more thing that the Cubs are doing that I'm actually working on a piece on tonight. I'm hoping it'll publish tomorrow. We have a new series over at Bleed Cubby Blue. It's called The Short Porch. Just real quick hits, like quick stats, things that are interesting. The Cubs lead the majors in stolen bases, but they are just not getting caught stealing that much at all. And some of that is PCA, some of that is Nico, but it's everybody else too, right? Like you only get to 12 stolen bases if you tally up what Nico and PCA have done so far. There's still like 14 stolen bases sitting there that the Cubs have gotten from all the other guys.
John Birdie's stolen 5 bases in like 6 at bats. So,
Tucker himself is stealing bases. Yeah. What can't he do?
Yeah.
They're putting pressure on the other team. Right? Like all of that is pressure. They're going to walk. They're going to hit for power. They're going to hit for average. They're going to steal bags. That is a juggernaut of an offense. And it's going to be a lot of fun when things heat up at Wrigley and that machine is cooking, as long as they have the pitching to hold the other teams.
I just love the fact that, the Cubs have led the league in runners stranded in scoring position for years, right? But to do that while simultaneously having over a 400 on base percentage in those exact situations is a testament to the fact that everyone gets on second base. That's one of the rules on this team, second or further, either because they get a double, a triple, a homer, or because, like you said, Sarah, they steal second base.
One of the big scares of the week was that offense potentially losing Seiya Suzuki for a while, as wrist pain is always scary. I at first was thinking, as soon as I hear he's hurt, I'm thinking oblique, because it's usually something like that for Seiya. But it's a wrist that's always scary. Sometimes, we just did a Derek Lee deep dive, and he lost a whole season with a wrist bothering him. And here, the good news is Craig Counsell says that both Seiya Suzuki with his wrist and Carson Kelly, who has a left hand contusion, are both expected to be available by Friday. So that's some good news that it's not more extensive. But I was holding my breath.
Seiya Suzuki has been one of the best hitters in baseball this year too, but he also was kind of underrated the last couple of years. If you run a multi-year qualified hitters WRC plus leaderboard, Seiya's in the top 20, and he's hanging out with guys like Francisco Lindor. So it's one of those things where it's like we kind of feel like it's been up and down for Seiya, and he's lost time to injury, so he hasn't gotten that reputation of like a guy who is that good of a hitter, but he is. I'm a little less worried about this wrist injury, only because he's already been playing through it, right? That's an injury he sustained against the Athletics, and he was playing through it and doing quite well prior to being taken out early in the Dodgers series. I'm with you, Jeremy. I'm so glad that it sounds like he's going to be back by Friday. I also, as much as I hated losing Alexander Canario over this signing, and we just talked a little bit about why that was in terms of playing time and his development and all those types of things, having Justin Turner as your backup DH does not suck, right? Justin Turner is a professional hitter. He knows exactly what he's going to do when he comes to the plate. He's a guy that you can see hitting 260, 270 in his age 40 season. And having that backup at designated hitter has been really helpful for the Cubs.
He's practically Gen X. And nobody else is. So I'll give him credit for that. Suzuki's, like you said, Suzuki's missed over 100 games the last 3 seasons in total. And had he had a full season in one of those years, he probably would have numbers that would be more noticeable to people sort of on a national level. So I really hope that this is a quick thing. What I don't want to have happen is for him to come back and play for a month and hit 210. And then afterwards, like, well, he was really hurt the whole time. Sort of like the Dansby Swanson, rib cage, all the guys who have these terrible slump years, whatever. And then afterwards you're like, well, but he was hurt the whole time. I'm like, well, he was really bad when he was hurt. So maybe don't play him if he's really hurt. and he can't, perform. So I hope that's not the case here. I hope that he actually comes back when he's actually healthy, because a wrist is not something you want to mess around with, because then you'll have a month where he hits like 1 homer and 2 doubles because he's got no power or something. I don't want that. So,
and he's been reaping the benefits of having Kyle Tucker in the lineup. I mean,
Yeah.
that really helps a guy like Suzuki bat in the right spot with the right protection.
Absolutely. And for somebody both of those guys have such good eyes too, right? When it comes to balls and strikes, meaning more base runners because they walk.
So we've talked about the offense. We've talked about the starting pitching. One of the topics that we've been hitting pretty hard has been the bullpen and the struggles that we've seen early in the bullpen. Is it getting better, Sarah, or has it just been a good week?
Well, one of the things that is a challenge with analyzing bullpens, period, is it's a slew of small sample sizes, right? So everything relievers do happens in tiny little sample sizes where it's like, oh no, he was terrible for 2 games, and it takes, a month and a half to get rid of that. I am very impressed with Porter Hodge. Porter Hodge is filthy. I like that he is in a situation where he does not have to close right away. But my money is on Porter Hodge being the closer by Memorial Day. And that's no shade to Ryan Presley, but I'm just watching these 2 guys back to back. And it's like one of these guys can get out anybody in the land and just looks like it's the easiest thing in history doing it. And Presley's kind of a little bit more about like guile and experience, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster.
Making me nervous. Yeah, Presley was making me nervous quite a few times.
Yeah.
Some sage person on our podcast actually before the season started predicted that Porter Hodge would lead the team in saves this year. I think, was it? I'll look up who did that. It wasn't Evan Altman. I know that. But no, I do. And I've we talked about this last week. Having these 36-year-old former Astro pitchers never seems to work out for the Cubs. They have a long history of this with Hector Neris and Dave Smith and everybody else. So I think I agree. I think Porter Hodge should be the closer. We toyed around with the idea of having Ben Brown as a closer, based on last year's performance. But at this point, we might need him out of the rotation now. So that might be
need him in the rotation. Yeah. Absolutely.
Man, Ben Brown was great against the Dodgers. Can we talk
so good?
It's not the first time Ben Brown has absolutely shoved against a great team. He did it last year a couple of times too, but I leave him in the rotation as long as he's doing this.
I agree. I also have these, I remember the Hayden Wisniewski era too, and some of these guys, they get your hopes up, and then, the key for him is going to be how deep can he go into games? Can he go more than 5 innings? Because with the bullpen that we've discussed having, and with the 5th starters, whether it's Wicks or Ray or any of these other guys, and then you've got Brown on top of that. If you're going to the bullpen after 5 innings every game, you're going to get exhausted here. So you need to be able to push a little bit deeper into games. But if he can do that, I'm all for it. I think it's great, and then we can have Ryan Presley pitch as a setup man, except for, of course, against the world champion Dodgers, where he's kind of a closer against a team like that. Like yesterday, just like easy breezy. It's just everyone else that's problematic.
I think having Julian Merriweather back to Julian Merriweather form helps a lot. That lengthens the bullpen quite a bit. Nate Pearson is one of these guys. When he is good, he is very, very good. And when he is bad, he is horrid. It actually reminds me a little bit of the Justin Wilson situation a few years ago. And I was just kind of cringe and cower the second Justin Wilson came in, because you never knew what you were going to get. It's like
you have a really good memory if you remember the good times from Justin Wilson, because I remember the bad times myself.
I remember him telling Anthony Rizzo to shut up on the mound, which is still one of my favorite Rizzo moments.
And that's another area too, by the way, where I think the Cubs could probably improve the team significantly, and for a lot less in terms of price versus a starting pitcher. But getting somebody else that can come out of the bullpen, or heaven forbid, do what every other of the 29 teams in baseball do, which is have somebody come up from the minors who throws 97 miles an hour. Like, or why are we the only team that can't do that? Like everybody else, the Pirates have like 4 of those guys. We'll see them the next time we play them, and the Reds will have them. You'll never have heard their names. They're all like 21 and 22, and they'll show up and they'll throw nothing but fire. And they might not be any good, but at least they throw hard. And we'll see. We'll see if the Cubs can get something from within. The other thing is they still have like the Javier Assad thing. I mean, I predict he's going to end up in the rotation at some point this year, frankly, just because, circumstances. But if not, at least pitch significant innings out of the bullpen. And then you got the Tyson Miller, right? He's still banging around. If he gets healthy, they could use him hopefully as a reliever too.
Oh, I think Javier Assad is in the rotation. I think Javier Assad is in the rotation before Colin Ray. I think a lot of that has to do with what Javier Assad has done as a starter versus what he's done as a reliever. His numbers are so much better as a starting pitcher than as a bullpen arm. And Javier Assad is wild to me, and I have never figured this out. I look at it periodically, and I try to write this piece, and I've just never really figured it out. The closest I came, I think I wrote something last year that was like, we don't know what to make of Javier Assad because he's a location guy purely. And that's just not a thing that plays anymore. Everybody talks about stuff. They don't talk about location. But what Javier Assad does so well is he locates his pitches and he does it in an order that is different than what the batters expect. And so he's doing a lot of backwards like he's pitching backwards, basically. Like when a hitter expects a curveball at a certain place, Javier Assad throws the curveball, but it's up in the corner or something. Like he just does weird things.
He's a great bad pitcher. He's a great bad pitcher. He always has been. His peripherals are garbage, but he still pitches like 6 1/3 shutout innings. I mean, even though his FIP is like 6 or something, it's like, how did he do that? I don't know. He just did it, and he does that. But he's done it consistently enough over a couple. It's the Kyle Hendricks phenomenon, or Mark Burley. If you do it long enough, people actually start giving you some credit for it. Never as much as you deserve, probably, but some. And if he can do it again this year, maybe he just has that special magic that some of these guys have, and we could certainly use it. Because I agree, I would prefer him over Colin Ray. I think he's a better pitcher. Colin Ray will get to go first though, because he's there now, unfortunately. But hopefully Assad will be up within the next 10 days or so. I think at the rate he's going.
Well, and I do think that Colin Ray has sort of he has that flexibility of going back and forth to the pen and the rotation. And I imagine, I think back to last season. At the start of last season, I was fairly convinced that Drew Smyly was going to be the 5th starter and Javier Assad was going to start in the pen. And Craig Counsell surprised me. He put Javier Assad in the rotation and put Drew Smyly in the pen. And I think that is because Counsell sees what we were all just talking about, which is that Javier Assad can pitch. Like, I don't know why it works. Every time I talk to the really smart pitching guru fantasy guys about this, like Eno Saris or Nick Pollock, they don't know why it works. The numbers say it shouldn't work. Everything says it doesn't work. And yet we just watch Javier Assad go out there, throw 6 innings, 1 or 2 runs, gets it done, walks off the mound. And I'm like, as long as that's working, you have to let the man do it. Like until it may break someday. When it breaks, it breaks.
Craig Counsell knows exactly what that is because he managed the Brewers all those years, and half their pitching staff is Javier Assad, in one way or another. I mean, it's the flukiest. You look at the names and you look at the numbers and you're like, how in the hell are these guys winning all the time? And he's one of those types of guys.
I was thinking about Counsell and his experience with the Brewers as I was digesting the Justin Steele news, because let's be honest, the Justin Steele news sucks. Like it's my there was a pit in my stomach and I was just not happy for like hours. But Craig Counsell knows how to get the most out of a rotation. He always has. And he knows how to do it with a bunch of guys who we've never heard of before. We've watched him do it for years, right? Like the Brewers had elite arms like Woodruff and Burns, but like they also had a bunch of guys come out of nowhere. Like,
and those guys were both lost
sitting on Tobias Myers. Like, I don't know, man.
Both Burns and Woodruff were out for significant periods of time with injuries too, and that's sort of the Steele phenomenon, right? But there's always somebody behind him who's much less accomplished and much worse by all metrics, and yet does fairly well. So.
Great.
Do that, Craig.
Well, last off the field issue I wanted to bring up here was a lot of talk this week about a contract extension for Pete Crow Armstrong. Marquee Sports reported that the Cubs offered PCA an extension that could max out at $75 million, and the next update was talks have ceased. So Sarah, we've talked about this. I think last time you were on the show, we talked about this. This is the ceiling of the farm system is PCA, and having an extension for him incredibly important for the folks that you have coming up, for solidifying, not losing a player as talented as he is. Does PCA's contract and a potential Kyle Tucker contract go hand in hand here, or are these two things that the Cubs could deal with separately?
I think they're two very different things, but I do think that the Cubs they fumbled the ball a little bit on extending their young talent. They wait too long, and then they try to like lowball these guys, and it's like, no. I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong's a really interesting player. They were talking about this on Sunday Night Baseball last night, and I think they're accurate. It's hard to value him at the moment because he's such a glove-first phenomenon. And defense as part of your WAR package, like nobody really knows how to value that the same way. The problem for the Cubs is that they try to lowball him. This contract could max out at $75 million. I mean, okay, whatever. I guess if that's just buying out his ARB years plus one or something, maybe that's a good deal for PCA, but I doubt it. PCA starts to hit, and he's got that glove. They're going to be looking at offering him 120 to 150 million in 6 months, right? And so it just feels like this is an offer that should have happened last year. And I'm looking at some of the contracts that are getting done right now with young talent. The Red Sox have extended a couple of their young players. The contract, the Brewers extended Jackson Chourio sight unseen. They were like, you have never had an at-bat in Major League Baseball. We will pay you $110 million is what that deal maxes out at. The Cubs are waiting too long to try to make these offers, right? And I'm not saying that Pete Crow Armstrong is Jackson Chourio. I think Jackson Chourio is a more well-rounded player. I understand why he would get more than PCA, but there's a non-zero chance that PCA is a better defender than Chourio, and he's like 75% of the offense that Chourio would give you. And if I'm PCA, I'm like, I'm not taking that deal. The last thing I'll say here, I think the Cubs don't have the right type of prospects for the type of extensions they're offering. And what I mean by that is that a lot of these deals are getting done with players who are international free agent signings. They're getting done with players who are with organizations that aren't crown jewel franchise type situations. I think back to when the Cubs were trying to extend Wilson Contreras or to extend Javier Baez. And it was in the same breath that the Cubs were like, we've won a World Series and we're the juggernaut at Clark and Addison and Theo and the Cubs way, and we're just going to be great forever. And then they're trying to lowball Wilson Contreras, and Wilson's like, no, I'm going to try my luck in free agency. And he ultimately got a deal that was akin to the Salvador Perez deal, but he got it from the Cardinals. He just didn't get it from the Cubs, right? I think that the Cubs, PCA is not the guy who is going to bet against himself. That's a kid who went to Harvard Westlake, who understands, who knows the score, and has a bunch of people telling him what his maximum value is. And I think the Cubs aren't trying to extend the right guys with those types of deals. And they're not interested in like extending a Miguel Amaya for a team-friendly deal, right? Like I think you could extend Miguel Amaya for a team-friendly deal right now, but that's not what the Cubs want to do. So it's a little bit of a weird situation where the types of players that they're trying to extend and the offers they're giving them do not match up. And honestly, I wish they would take a page out of what the Red Sox are doing right now, because I think Theo's doing it's not Theo, he's a special advisor to the Red Sox or whatever. But who did they get from the Cubs? The pitching guy. My brain is broken.
The scouting
the guy who made the pitch lab for the Cubs, and I am forgetting his name. One of you needs to look it up.
Last name begins with like a B, doesn't it?
I cannot remember this guy's name, and it's killing me right now. But
they you're right. They gave was it Carpenter, the second baseman? They just gave him an extension.
Christian Campbell, Campbell
played for 2 weeks, right?
Who's played for 2 weeks, right? Like this is where extensions happen now. Extensions happen in the first month of a player's career, not after that player has shown you what he can do for a year and a half. And I just feel like the Cubs are behind the 8 ball here, are not behind the 8 ball here. I'm gonna look this guy's name up. It's bugging me.
It's so hard. You're right.
Breslow,
you invoke
Craig Breslow.
It does begin with a B. There you
go. It does invoke recent memories of when they did this to some of the core players, Anthony Rizzo too, and a lot of these low ball offers. You're right. I don't get what they're trying to do here. And Pat,
although with those guys, they never really. I mean, they did actually give. Rizzo is an exception, unlike the others, because he actually did get an extension with the Cubs, right? Like
a team-friendly extension. A team-friendly extension that Jeff Samardzija basically poo-pooed from the locker room, if you recall correctly. Yeah. And Samardzija then got shipped off and turned into more prospects that the Cubs didn't extend.
Addison Russell.
For good reason in that case. Thank God. Thank God.
But you're right, Jeremy, when it comes to like certainly the Bryants, and that was a whole nother, that was an extension that probably was not going to get done based on his agents and other stuff. By the way, poor Chris Bryant today went on the injured list. Did you see with what he's on the injured list? Degenerative disc disease, lumbar degenerative disc disease. I got bad news for you. That is not a condition that you get over. That is a degenerative condition, and that is not a good sign.
That's sad.
Oof. Yeah.
But this just goes back to what I'm saying about, I think that the Cubs don't have the right guys for these types of extensions. And
when you extend them, do it when they're 22.
Yeah,
right?
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm saying do it when they're 22, like you're saying, not when they're like 29. I mean, that's the time to do it.
Now here's an interesting candidate for an extension. Justin Steele. The Cubs could very much go to Justin Steele and be like,
your arm doesn't work. We'll give you a deal. We're
going to extend you out past the surgery, like what the Brewers did with Woodruff, right? Yeah. Like the Brewers non-tendered Brandon Woodruff, I believe, and then made a deal with him that was like a deal that went 1 year beyond when he was going to be healthy again. Yeah. And it was a low ball offer based on what he had done in the past, but because of the injury, they were able to get him to sign on for that. Right now, Justin Steele is not going to be a free agent until 2028. He's going to miss all of the 2025 season, depending on what procedures he has done. And I'm still not sure what he's going to have done based on what I've read. But depending on what procedures he has done, he might miss part of the 2026 season too, right? Whether that's an internal brace situation or whether there's additional things that need to be done there. And so what if you say, hey, look, we're going to give you a deal that is slightly less than you would have made in arbitration prior to the injury through your years to becoming a free agent, and we'll extend you beyond that at 1.25 times what you think you're going to get. But you will be guaranteed that you're going to be pitching in a Chicago Cubs uniform until 2029. That's a guy you could probably get to sign a team-friendly extension right now and lock him down for the next 3 years after this. Because again, that's dependent on what the surgery is, but there are a number of pitchers who've had 2 Tommy Johns and been just fine. Nathan Eovaldi comes to mind. Like, I see no reason that Justin Steele is not going to be excellent when he comes back. Just a thought.
Theo did that a couple times with pitchers, not even Cub pitchers, but just free agent pitchers, where they do the 2-year deal knowing they'd miss the first year, team friendly, with the hopes that they'd get the upside in the second year.
Let's look ahead to the week that will be for the Cubs as they finish their West Coast road trip, playing at San Diego tonight, Tuesday and Wednesday, to return home for Friday. We made mention last week, Pat, a lot of Thursdays off. That trend continues for the entire month of April. No Thursday
Yeah.
games.
Almost the whole season. It's crazy how many Thursdays they have off.
Yeah, it's wild.
Farmers markets at Wrigley Field.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
That's when the farmers market is, when the Cubs aren't playing on Thursday.
100%.
And the Cubs will come home to play Arizona again for 3 games at home, and then the Dodgers come back for 2 more. And the Phillies will close out the homestand. They travel to Pittsburgh to close out the month of April. This was a real scary month on paper, and so far I'd say best case scenario for these Cubs. Looking ahead to the Padres and Diamondbacks, Sarah, again, good favorable pitching matchups for the Cubs against the Padres. And then playing Arizona, we'll do a quick round of predictions. How are you feeling for the rest of this week, the upcoming 6 games?
I'm feeling pretty good, actually, because the Cubs are kind of rolling. Anytime you're beating the Dodgers in a bullpen game, that's going to get some momentum going. I'm very curious to see how they react to the Justin Steele news, but it does seem like that has not impacted the morale in the clubhouse just yet. Like, as long as the pitchers keep doing their thing, coming back home should be, it looks like, I was looking at the weather, looks like it's going to cool down a little bit here in Wrigleyville towards the end of the week. That's pitching weather for this team. And, I kind of like that for the Cubs, right? Like, that's going to favor their pitchers. It's going to be good pitching weather for like a Tyon, good pitching weather for a Colin Ray, good pitching weather for a Ben Brown. Simultaneously, you've got a team that's built on contact more so than power at the moment. And so I think the Cubs can score runs in that environment in a way that maybe their opponents don't. I will say, of these matchups coming up, the one that worries me most is the Diamondbacks. I know the Dodgers are supposed to be like the huge juggernaut that everybody's scared of, but I feel like the Cubs just slayed that giant, and they'll feel pretty good about that. The Diamondbacks have given the Cubs a headache, and everything about that team is set up to mess with the Cubs in a couple of different ways, right? Like, they run a lot, and the Cubs catchers aren't exactly great at controlling the running game, so you don't want to let those guys on base at all, and then they start doing their thing. The lineup that the Diamondbacks put out there against Jamison Tyon, I'm sure he had nightmares about it, because it was just designed to wreck his splits, right? It was like designed to get in his head and all the problems he's had over the last couple of years. And he was fine, but I just see the Diamondbacks are constructed in a way that they match up real well against the Cubs, and I think that's the hardest team they have to play right now. The Phillies are not playing clean baseball at the moment. They're making a lot of mental errors. They just kind of haven't found their groove just yet. I was actually just looking on Blue Sky at some Phillies fans who were just like pulling their hair out about like, gotta make that play. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And it's, Phillies fans get a Philly fan, but it is true that they're not exactly playing clean baseball right now. And I think the Cubs could come out of this homestand quite well, but it's going to be more difficult if the Diamondbacks do damage against them to start it off.
And I think the Diamondbacks also have their best starters going against the Cubs.
And Michael Busch just went Bombski.
Oh, nice.
Plakata.
Cubs are up. Yeah.
Just stealing all of the phrases from our favorite marquee sports host.
We're going to go up against some good pitchers with Arizona. Plus, like you said, they run. In a wind blowing in situation, we won't have as much of an advantage over them as we would over many other teams. I don't want to hear any complaining from the Phillies, by the way. They have Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber. So as far as I'm concerned, they owe me two All-Stars.
They're the Bizarro Cubs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. Somewhere, some counterfactual out there. Random point of privilege for 1 second. I get to do one of the most fun things I'm ever going to get to do in my entire life during this Phillies series, and I'm so excited about it. One of my childhood friends from Utah is coming to visit with her 9-year-old daughter. They have never been to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field before. And so I'm taking them to the Friday afternoon Cubs Phillies game. We're going to sit in the bleachers. We're going to do the whole Wrigley Field bit. And I don't know about y'all, but introducing a 9-year-old kid to Wrigley is just like, that is the perfect day for me. That is going to be the coolest, most perfect day. And I'm very excited about it.
That's awesome. Always special to get to see something like that. That's great. I'm going to ask for predictions for the next 6 games. 3 at San Diego, 3 at home against Arizona. Over the next 6, Pat, we'll start with you.
I think in the first game, the Cubs will probably take a lead about halfway through, sure. And then it's going to be anybody's game. I was a little more optimistic last week with that 4-2. Given the recent turn of events on the starting staff and the teams the Cubs are playing, I'm going with 3-3 this week, which I think is perfectly acceptable given the opponents and the situation.
Sarah?
I'm going to say 4-2. This team's been surprising me a little bit. I really like the offense. I've been waiting for this Cubs offense to show up. So I'm going to say 4-2, but I think I understand why Pat's going 3-3. I talked myself into some Diamondbacks losses there a second ago, and now I'm going to be optimistic despite that.
I was 4-2, and you talked me into some Diamondbacks losses now. And so I think I'm going to stick with, I'm going to go with 3-3 as well. So let's wrap up how we do every week. And that is a new feature, a new segment we do where our guests, they choose a Cub from the past for us to profile. So far, we've profiled Moises Alou, Derek Lee, Ryan Sandberg, and last week, Matt Trueblood chose Joe Pepitone. So, Sarah, you're on the clock. As soon as we're done, we will get your pick for us to preview, to profile next week. So, think about that as Pat, tell us about Joe Pepitone.
Well, Matt Trueblood picked Joe Pepitone, Peppy, as they called him. I did a lot of research on Joe Pepitone. I don't have time to go through all of it today. If anybody wants the full, unabridged version, let me know. I thought that, so my memories of Joe Pepitone are non-existent. My only memories are my dad telling me about Joe Pepitone. Because, he was this Yankee when they were good, and then he came to the Cubs in the early 70s and was okay, but not great. He was older, of course, as all Cub free agents were at the time. That's how we got players at the time. They were bad by the time we got them. And he was kind of a party guy and a lot of funny stories. What I didn't realize till I did the research is he's kind of a tragic figure. It's really a sad story. It's a terribly sad story, the whole Joe Pepitone story. He was born in Brooklyn, Park Slope, in 1940. When he was in high school, he got shot by a fellow student in school and came this close to dying because the bullet was it was a through and through, but somehow managed not to go through his spine or any other vital organs. But it was touch and go. That same week, his dad died of a stroke. And you're like, oh, that's terrible. His dad died of a stroke. His dad was a terrible person, physically and mentally abusive. He threw something at him once and got a shard of glass in his eye, and he almost lost his vision. I mean, just terrible. The whole thing is just a terrible childhood. I think it informed, according to him, he wrote a book in 1975 called, a self-titled book called Joe, You Could Have Made Us Proud, which is kind of sad. It's kind of, yeah. And he probably could have. But, he attributes a lot of his poor behavior and his future addiction to alcohol and potentially drugs to the childhood he had, his lack of focus and attention on baseball. He was a super prospect. The scouts said he had soft hands, great speed, strong arm, fast, powerful left-handed swing. Okay, sounds good to me. And PCA practically, right? Signed by the Yankees in 1958, made his debut in 1962. That's back when the Yankees were good. That was Maris and Mantle and Whitey Ford and Elston Howard and those guys. In his second year, he won the starting job at first base and was an all-star his second, third, and fourth years. Won 3 Gold Gloves, made 3 all-star teams, played in the World Series 2 years. Not a bad way to start your career. Unfortunately, one of the things that he liked to do a lot was party, and he partied a lot. And of course, that was old Mickey Mantle at that point, who was also a partier. So they would hang out with Frank Sinatra, and they'd go out, and there are all these stories about him missing curfew or getting in trouble. In his rookie year, he decided to go out at 1:30 in the morning, and he ran into the manager by the elevator, and he made up some excuse about how he was going to look for his roommate. And it was Ralph Hawk, who was the manager at the time, was an old, curmudgeonry guy, and he double checked and found out that the roommate was in fact asleep in bed. And so when Pepitone got back at 4 a.m. or whatever, Hulk said, you're going back to AAA. So they sent him to the minors back when you would do stuff like that. And it was just like one example of many instances where he did that. He was good for a long time with the Yankees, but then as he started to get older and started focusing on things other than baseball, his numbers started to slip a bit. And in 1970, he was traded from the Yankees to Houston Astros, and he lasted about a couple months there. I think they had a really strict team there. He thought New York was bad. It was the manager and the whole organization was super uptight, super strict. He's like, I'm just going to quit baseball. So they ended up working out a deal. He said he'd go play for the Cubs or Mets, but that was it, or else he's quitting baseball. So they found out a deal. They sold him to the Cubs. This is a guy, by the way, Pepitone, who his signing bonus out of when he first signed with the Yankees was like $20,000, which would be like $250,000 today. He literally spent the whole thing the first week he had it. It was, bought a boat, a car, dog, whatever. So he was never very good with money. So he comes to the Cubs, and with the Cubs, he came in 1970, and he played through May of 1973. Leo Dioscher was the manager for the Cubs, and was actually an advocate and kind of understood this type of player, and they got along pretty well. And back then, remember, and it was right after the '69 season when the Cubs won the World Series, practically. So in the following years, they won 84, 83, 85 games. They were good, not quite playoff good, but competitive good. And so his first year with the Cubs, he was very good. He hit 307, had an 830 OPS. Was really doing well. He kind of started to go south after that. Again, he partied a lot. He bought a bar when he came to Chicago at 12 East Division Street called Joe Pepitone's Thing. And I looked it up. I think it used to be the Rookery. It's now been torn down. It's now a residence. I looked it up on Google Maps just to do my research because, I'm very thorough about this stuff. And I've walked that neighborhood a lot. And so Joe Pepitone's Thing was good. The players used to hang out there. I'm sure Ron Santo hung out there. I wish Ron was still here. I'd love to ask him about it, because all those guys, I'm sure, back in the day would go there. But then they were ordered by the team to stop going there because the place got busted for a drug ring. But it wasn't just his place. It was a bunch of bars on Division Street. People were running drugs out of these bars, shockingly, in the early 70s. And so business went down, and he ended up having to sell the bar. And the players weren't there anymore. So, oh well. Durocher left, and the new manager that came in was Whitey Lockman, and he was stricter than Durocher and didn't really get along with Pepitone. Plus, Pepitone had a salary dispute with John Holland, who was the general manager of the Cubs. He wanted more money, and they couldn't agree on that. And so his performance started to sink, and as a result, the Cubs ended up trading him midway through 1973. So his Cubs career was basically 3 years. One really good year, one okay year, and then one poor year. They traded him for Andre Thornton, by the way, who would then lead the Cubs in home runs in 1975 with 18. That was not the COVID year, by the way. And so off he went. He was often referred to as a wasted talent. He left. He went to the Atlanta Braves. He played 3 games. He hit like 600 and then quit, and went to Japan because they offered him $70,000. And again, like I said, he ran out of money a lot, so he needed it. And so he goes to Japan. Turns out, believe it or not, remember this is like 1974 in Japan. Culture there was a little more strict than it was here in the States. So even the Houston Astros, which he thought was the most unbearable environment he'd ever been in, was nowhere near the level of discipline and attention to work that the Japanese teams were requiring. So he didn't last very long there. He ended up coming back to the States, and he bounced around and did stuff. He ended up playing for a professional men's softball team. And in fact, I don't know if you remember this, but in 1980, at the age of 40, he was the president and starting first baseman of the Chicago nationwide advertising team. They finished second to Milwaukee and then lost in the playoffs. It was a 1 year. The league lasted 1 year. Yes, it was a slow pitch softball league.
Professional slow pitch softball.
Yes.
Here for it.
Yeah.
I feel like some former Cubs would rake.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. Hector Villanueva would have been great in something like this. He, his whole career was plagued by tardiness, partying, missing games, missing meetings, showing up late, not really paying close attention. He had a couple of little weird facts in life. In 1966, he sued the New York City Board of Education for $100,000 because A, of course, he needed the money, and B, he sued him for the shooting from 1958. Unfortunately, a jury unanimously ruled against him in the verdict, so he didn't get any money from New York City. Now, I'm surprised if that happened today, they'd probably settle out of court. He would have gotten something at least, I mean, he did get shot by a kid in high school, and he didn't do anything. Like, he was unprovoked for once. He was also credited with he coached for the Yankees at one point. I'll explain why in a second, but he coached them and taught Don Mattingly the finer points of playing first base. He was coaching there as part of his prison release program because he got busted for a drug thing. He was at Rikers Island for a couple months, and Steinbrenner kind of brought him back and gave him this job so that he could get out of prison. He had a lot of other issues like that, DUIs, where he crashed his car in the Queens Midtown Tunnel and hit a bunch of cars and then just like wandered off and walked out, stuff like that. Not good. He once was arrested and charged with battery for fighting after, this is in 1992 at the age of 52. Somebody called him a washed up nobody in a bar. And he didn't take very kindly to that. I mean, if the shoe fits though, right? He posed fully nude in Foxy Lady magazine.
I didn't know Foxy Lady was a magazine.
No.
I did not either, nor did I did not investigate that any further, but I will tell you that he got paid, so that was probably another reason he did that.
Joe Pepitone's thing was paid twice. So
yeah,
the bar.
yeah, right. He was famous. In 1963, he brought the first ever hairdryer into the Yankee clubhouse. He was known for his attention to his hair and hair gel and a lot of other stuff. He was kind of a playboy in that regard. In 1963, he also instigated the worst brawl in Yankee Stadium history with the pitcher after he'd been hit by a pitch and stuff like that. So he had kind of an up and down career. I mean, he started off so great and it kind of went the way of a lot of guys. I mean, he was more reminiscent to me of some of the guys who like were great in the 70s and then the early 80s. They went off track. Like I'm thinking like the Dave Parkers of the world and the Darryl Strawberries, who had the, with a lot of substance abuse stuff, who kind of fell off what would have been like Hall of Fame type careers. Although Parker just recently was added to the Hall of Fame, thankfully. But Pepitone never quite reached those high levels. He was a level below. He died in 2023 at the age of, 83. So it lasted quite a while. And it's kind of a tragic life, really. There was a lot of comedy in it because he was kind of a very like colorful guy. He was a character of the game. Jim Bouton talked about him in Ball 4. If you really want to know more about him, you could read his book, Joe, You Could Have Made Us Proud. So that was from 1975, and a lot happened after 1975.
Yeah, I was going to say, like,
his post career was basically the partying without the baseball part, so it was probably worse. But yeah, he was a Cub. He was a good Cub in 1970. But that's about it.
Absolutely fascinating. No,
yeah.
That's that was a interesting. I did not know about how much of a character Joe Pepitone was. So.
Yeah.
All right, Sarah. Tough act to follow. Who are we going to talk about next week?
I mean, I changed my mind like 7 times while I was listening to the all of the cool facts about Joe Pepitone, but I'm not going to do quite as deep of a cut here. I had a name in my head when you told me about this project. I'm going to go with the guy that I started with, one of my all-time favorite Cubs, bit of a role player, but beloved by this fan base and somebody we all still know and get to hear from all the time. That is Mark DeRosa. So,
great pick.
Nice.
One of my all-time favorite Cubs. The day he was traded, I was furious and I am happy to report that Mark DeRosa has said that he was furious too, because he loved playing for the Chicago Cubs. Yeah. So I'll listen next week when you talk about him.
That's a great pick.
Yeah, that is excellent. I thought you were going to go with the guy we got from the Orioles to play first base, Trey Mancini. I was like, that's not going to be fun at all. But this will be much better.
There were like 6 names that popped into my head. While I was like, oh, can I out obscure Matt Trueblood? And I did almost go with Orville Overall for a second there, because that is one of my all-time favorite Cub names, and I would love to know more about him. But I think Mark DeRosa is the dude that he deserves this. He is a Cub through and through to me.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify. The point of this exercise is not to torture me. It's to actually come up with something that will be entertaining, and I think Mark DeRosa will.
Mark DeRosa absolutely will. No, that's great. This was a great time. Time flies when we're catching up with Sara Sanchez. Sara, please remind all of our listeners where they can find your work on the internet and how they can follow you on the blue sky.
Thank you all so much. I love chatting baseball with you too, especially when the Cubs are winning. It's been a hot minute since we've gotten to do one of these when the Cubs were good. It's always more fun when the Cubs are winning. You can find me on social media at BCB_Sara, except on Blue Sky where there are not underscores. So I'm just at BCB Sara. Blue Sky is great. So check it out. If you're not there already, you can find my Cubs writing at bleedcubbyblue.com. And you can find my Cubs podcast at the Bleacher Bunch Network, where there are a ton of great shows like this one. So definitely be sure that you're subscribed there so you never miss anything.
And you can follow us and interact with the show on social media platforms at Wrigleyville Nat. And of course, we ask that you go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com, search for the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. There, we are trying to build up our subscriber community. The video version of the podcast is there. If you don't consume your podcast via the video form, we still would appreciate if you go over there, give us a subscribe, a like. Helps us work the algorithm so that other Cub fans can find the show. And continue to subscribe through all the audio channels of choice, as well as we are back now in season every single week, so you don't want to miss an episode. And of course, thank you to all of our patrons that support the show over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. This is how we stay ad-free for another season, because of all the support we get over at our Patreon, patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. All the links I described, the entire back catalog of this show, is all available at our website, wrigleyvillenation.com. And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.